Hi, this is Miss Townsend. Let's do this grade 10 math question together. We're given a line y equals 1 over 6x minus 5. So we recognize a couple things. First of all, that is a line written in slope-intercept form, meaning that we know the slope of the line, it's 1 over 6, and we have the y-intercept, which would be the point 0, comma, negative 5 if we needed it. So that's line number 1, which we're given. So let's look at what we're asked to do in part A. Line number 2 is parallel to line number 1 and passes through the point negative 6, 1. Find the equation of line number 2 in both slope-intercept form and standard form. So to find an equation of a line, I always want to start with this. This is slope-intercept form, and that's how you create or build a line. And in order to have the equation of this line, line number 2, I need the slope and I need the y-intercept or b value. So I know the slope already because I'm told that my line, line number 2, the one I'm working on, is parallel to the first line I was given, line number 1. And that means that it has the same slope as line number 1. So it's parallel. So the slope is also 1 over 6. So that means so far, I know the equation of the line I'm looking for looks like this. Y equals 1 over 6x plus b. Now I have to find b. So the other thing I need is I need a point on the line. So I know that the point negative 6, 1 is a point on line number 2, and that's the only point I know. Just to clarify that, I know over here, I talked about the y-intercept being 0, negative 5, but that was part of line number 1. And the only thing I needed for line number 1 was to take the slope, which I did. So I don't need this anymore at all, and I don't want it to confuse me or you or anyone. So I'm going to focus over here on part A because I don't know B. I don't know what that y-intercept is, but I have a point. And anytime I have a point that exists on a line, I have an x and a y value that I can use to help calculate. So, for some reason my computer is not responding nicely to me, but that's okay. I'm not going to edit my videos. There we go. Yay. So how do I find b? Well, I take the values of x and y that I know, and I sub them into the equation. So I know that if x is negative 6, y is 1. So I'm going to let y be 1 and x be negative 6. And what that means is the only unknown I have in that whole equation is b, so I can solve for b. So let's do this math. I've got 1 equals, so I don't need to change that. 1/6 times negative 6 is negative 6 divided by 6, which is negative 1. And then plus b. So I'm going to add 1 to this side to get 2. So that gives me my b value. b is equal to 2. So that's the equation of line number 2 in slope-intercept form. Now the question also said put it into standard form. So here's what I remember about standard form. Standard form looks like this. All of the terms are on the left side of the equal sign. And rules like no fractions allowed for A, B, C, and the A value has to be positive. So I'm going to start by taking my my slope-intercept form, and I'm not allowed to have fractions in standard form, so I'm going to multiply everything by 6. So that would become 6y. This would become 6 over 6x, which is just 1x, and then 6 times 2 is 12. And then I'm going to move everything to the left and put it in the proper order. So I'll have negative x. 6y is still 6y, but I'll indicate a positive sign. And then minus 12 equals 0. And then because the leading term, or the first term, is negative, and we're not supposed to have that, I'm going to multiply everything by negative 1, which really just changes the sign of everything. And that's the equation of line number 2 in standard form. So that was part A of the question. So let's look at what we're asked to do with part B. So part B tells us that we're looking for another line called line number 3. And what we know about line number 3 is that it's perpendicular to line number 1, and it passes through the origin. So again, to create the equation of a line, I think about this. This is the slope-intercept form. And if I can state the slope of the line and a point on the line, then I can tell you the equation of the line. So line number 3, what do I know about slope? Well, I know that line number 3 is perpendicular to line number 1. So if it's perpendicular, then that relates to the slope of both lines. So the slope of line number 1 is 1 over 6. So the perpendicular slope would be the flipped fraction, so the reciprocal, and change the polarity. So this was 1 over 6, so this is negative 6 over 1. I would probably just write that as negative 6, but it means the same thing. So that's the slope of line number 3. Again, it's perpendicular to the first slope. I also know that line number 3 passes through the origin. Well, the origin is just a point. It's just a special point. It's the point 0, 0. So now I have a slope and a point, which means I can find the equation of the line. So to start with, I already know the slope, so y equals negative 6x plus b. And you may already remember some good tricks from grade 9 about what b is. You may already know that, but just in case you don't see what it is, I'm going to do what I always do. This is my default. This is x and this is y. If I sub 0 in for y and 0 in for x, then I can calculate b. Well, I get 0 equals 0 plus b, so obviously b equals 0, which means the equation of the line in slope-intercept form is just y equals negative 6x. And then to write it in standard form, I need to move everything to the left. So negative, when I move negative 6 to the left, I'm actually adding 6, so it becomes 6x, and then that's still positive y equals 0. So that is the equation in standard form, and again, that's the equation of line number 3 in slope-intercept form. I hope that was helpful. Keep practicing math.